11 South African men, lured to fight in a war they didn't understand, are finally coming home. This is Kenya News Update today. Coming up, you'll discover how a father's desperate plea and a presidential phone call exposed a shocking international recruitment scheme. These men were promised lucrative jobs as bodyguards, but instead found themselves on the freezing front lines of Ukraine, digging trenches for Russia. And here's the twist. Their return reveals a hidden diplomatic drama between South Africa and Moscow that could reshape global alliances. Meet the father known only as Dubandula. His son, like 16 others, was trapped in the war-torn Donbas region of Ukraine. For months, he endured unimaginable suffering. But here's what nobody's talking about: the direct line between two presidents that made this rescue possible. In November of last year, the South African government received those first desperate distress calls. 17 men, aged between 20 and 39, were begging for help to return home, one from the Eastern Cape, the rest from KwaZulu-Natal. They were allegedly lured by the promise of employment contracts, only to be thrust into a mercenary force fighting for Russia. The conditions were brutal. Dubandula told Reuters in December that his son was crying constantly, begging to be saved. They dug trenches daily in freezing weather. For maybe 5 days, they didn't get any food. It was so hard even to bathe. This wasn't a job, it was a nightmare. And then something shocking happened: a diplomatic intervention at the highest level. On February 10th, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa picked up the phone and called Russian President Vladimir Putin. The heads of state pledged their support to bring these men home. This single phone call unlocked the entire process. President Ramaphosa has now expressed his heartfelt gratitude to President Putin for responding positively. But the story isn't over for everyone. 4 of the 17 men returned home a few days ago. 11 are set to arrive soon, but 2 remain in Russia. One is still in a hospital in Moscow, being monitored by the South African embassy until he recovers enough to travel. The other is being processed before finalizing his travel arrangements. The circumstances surrounding their recruitment remain under investigation. This case raises huge questions about international mercenary recruitment and the vulnerability of young men seeking work. Some see this as a successful diplomatic rescue mission. Others see it as a disturbing example of how global conflicts ensnare civilians from neutral nations. The South African embassy had previously denied reports that the men were fighting for Ukraine, clarifying they were with Russian forces. This detail matters as it places the diplomatic request directly to the Kremlin, but here's the part that will blow your mind. This repatriation, brokered between Pretoria and Moscow, happens against a complex geopolitical backdrop. It shows how non-aligned nations navigate the treacherous waters of a major war. The human cost is clear in the father's voice: "All the time my boy is crying." For the families, this is a story of relief and trauma. For the world, it's a case study in modern warfare's indirect reach. The investigation continues. Who recruited these men? Who offered the false contracts? The answers could expose a wider network. But for now, the focus is on getting everyone home. The South African government has confirmed the return plans, and the embassy in Moscow stands ready. This saga of 17 men trapped in a foreign war is finally nearing its end, but the legal and diplomatic repercussions are just beginning. Do you think this sets a precedent for other nations to retrieve citizens from conflict zones? Or does it risk legitimizing mercenary recruitment? Drop your take in the comments. Subscribe to Kenya News Update today for more on international stories that hit close to home.